Well, welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans.
And today is November 20-something or other.
26?
2019. We
2 days before Turkey Day.
Before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. May not be Turkey Day for everybody.
That's true. Actually, won't be for us. Actually, I think.
And you're not even a vegetarian.
That's true. I think we're going to go to our neighbor's house for leftovers the following day.
Oh, I know who that neighbor is too.
That's true.
But I can't go because I'll be away.
Post-Thanksgiving
fest. Thanksgiving you should just do what you want, be with who you love. That's it.
Actually, I actually do sort of get kind of reflective
nostalgic
around Thanksgiving. Today I was actually sitting in my office when I should have been thinking about politics and whatever, and I was playing nostalgic music.
Oh, like what? What's nostalgic for you?
For
70s?
me, it's Roy Orbison.
Oh, he died in a plane accident.
No, he didn't.
Oh, he wasn't the one.
Illness,
Buddy Holly.
But Roy Orbison, I was playing today, and
he has a real tearjerker one. Roy Orbison, the one crying. Oh my
absolutely.
God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, he's a marvelous.
Did he do Pretty
musician.
Woman too?
Yes, he did. He absolutely did. I played that today.
Julia Roberts. That movie was great.
Yeah, no, it was a good soundtrack for it. So anyway, so Thanksgiving's a coming.
Yeah.
And council's a meeting. I think that they
short
meet
meetings.
next week.
Yes, they.
Yeah,
they do actually.
Yeah, it's.
No, it's a round table.
That's right.
It's a round table on pre-K, and then after at a special meeting, they combined it about the construction of the new Tobin.
The new Tobin.
Yes.
Yeah. So they did meet last night, relatively short. I mean, actually, it had, as you pointed out, there've been a few weeks of relatively short meetings.
Since the election.
Yeah. There was a lot of sort of build up and posturing.
Yeah.
As soon as the election passed, it was kind of like chill.
Less controversy.
Right? Well, wrapping up business. I think there's usually not that much desire to initiate things.
Right. But to try to finish up things, which like the Karp Petition.
Yeah, for example, that. Yeah. So they're actually meeting right now.
Right now.
Unless they've adjourned it.
And it is televised. You could turn to them instead of us. But that's also, we're both recorded, so.
There you go.
Either one.
And I don't know exactly where the votes are on the Karp Petition. Karp Petition, by the way, for those who are not, it has nothing to do with goldfish. Or carp. This is K-A-R-P, but it has to do with East Cambridge.
Yes. The Galleria. It's the Cambridge Side Galleria.
Cambridge Side Galleria, and which is with 2 L's or 1 L. I always confuse.
I think it's 2.
I think the sales pitch does it one way, the legal documents may do it another way, but it doesn't matter. It's just the Galleria.
Yeah.
And, malls just generally, even urban malls are a little iffy these days.
Right, just because the chains are not doing well. I mean, basically retail is at a different point in history.
Well, it's interesting because food courts, which are something that I always associated with malls, seem to be doing very well.
Well, they're quick and inexpensive, and they're right there.
Yeah, I mean, my ideal mall, by the way, to whatever degree there's going to continue to be a mall.
Right.
Well, not necessarily just hot dogs, but it should be kind of vendors. It should be a little more, little less glitzy, a little less.
The Cambridge Side Gallery, I have to say, over the years, to me was a more user-friendly mall to me.
Especially when it had a Registry of Motor Vehicles branch there.
Well, I forgot about that, but I never used that one. But the point is, it had
a toy store.
Yeah, but it just was small. It had activity. It was close enough. It had the lagoon thing. It was okay. But did you hear the owner of that and his daughter talk last night?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was the owner
of
his
daughter?
One of the concessions, one of the businesses that have been there since the beginning.
Right, but one of the big businesses. He had some stake in the mall, and his daughter, who was, I guess, an infant when he started is now working in there, and so I thought that was interesting.
That was very nice, actually. No, I mean, I
something has to be done.
Something should probably
But is it this
change.
that has to be done?
Yeah,
is that the issue?
and I personally, I'm pretty agnostic about it. I do think, I'm quick to acknowledge that, malls as a standalone concept are maybe kind of a thing of the past, and so something
they
should
have to
change.
have a mixed use, which is what the thing is now.
Right, exactly. So, I think that another part of the controversy, the first Karp petition called for more significant heights,
like towers,
and they did this. They did
Yeah.
downscale that to some
The
degree.
people still don't like that.
Some people
Because
may
it's
not
going to
like
block
that.
their light. I hate to tell you, but
Yeah?
I have a brick building next to me now that I do not see the sky, so I guess
Yeah.
I have little sympathy. Of course, I moved into that situation, but
You know,
change is
there are.
hard,
I think there are some people who want to set no limits at all. You know, they
Right.
say the sky's the limit, and
Yeah.
denser is better, higher is better, and
You've
better
got to
and better
have
and better.
every situation is different.
You got to really look at it
And,
place by
and
place
you,
by
you
place.
talk to the community, but it really, unless you control everything, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I actually was quite moved last night when Rhonda Massey spoke at public comment at the city council meeting.
Did she
She's
come
written-
after Tom Joyce, I think? Because he said,
yes.
I'm introduced, yeah.
Yes.
And what's
And she was
her,
there primarily because of the matters having to do with the public library.
the O'Connell
with
Library,
the
yeah. I want to
opening of the
mention
new
something
school.
about that too, yeah.
Yeah, and and that was kind of interesting. But then she did sort of say, I just want to also say that I'm not in favor, and I will never be in favor
Oh.
of big towers.
Oh, she did say that.
Yeah,
But
and-
didn't she say she wanted some improvement or no?
She definitely acknowledges, like a lot of us
Yeah.
do, the need to kind of
Yeah.
update what the mall is,
Mm-hmm.
but just turning it into downtown, I think, is maybe something that not
Right.
everybody's so warm to. And she said something which I really kind of got to me was she was talking about walking, ever since she's a kid,
Oh,
from
yes.
Inman Street, Inman Square down to into East Cambridge, where we have the sky. You have at least a perception that as you walk down the street, you see the sky.
Can't
and
do
you're
that.
not just
I don't know.
totally
I walk
boxed
down
in.
there. I see
No,
the
I
sky.
think right now you most certainly
Oh,
can.
yeah. But it's at
thing-
the ends that you can. They're not talking
Right.
about building all along
Yeah.
from Inman to.
Right, but when
Yeah.
I hear people talk that way, I think to
Well-
myself, well, there is something to
And
be
you
said
also
about
know
that.
they're older.
That's true.
I'm
That's true.
sorry.
It's true, but the thing is
Yeah.
that
No, it's a point.
it's a theme that's been going through my head for a few weeks, and it was definitely coming through my head when I was at the planning board meeting last week about the Harvard Square zoning petition that
Oh, right.
from Suzanne VA
We can
and
talk
partly
about that a little
authored
bit
by
later. Yeah, okay.
Patrick Barrett.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting presentation. But I kept saying to myself, we've sort of went through the first flash of this idea about transit-oriented development and the need for density and height near transit, and then that sort of has drifted out toward just density's good,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that I quite 100% agree with that in all the cases.
Yeah, I
But-
agree.
But I think maybe we're kind of primed for maybe phase 3 of this discussion, which is that, well, maybe if density is good, maybe there is an ideal density for certain contexts. In other words, and examples I would give was given as saying, like, if you go down to a place like Riverside,
Yeah.
there's a lot of houses that are pretty close together, but they're all maybe 2-3 stories tops,
Yeah, I know.
but they're
I
pretty
live-
crowded
yeah.
together, and it kind of works.
Well,
but
they have
it-
driveways. Not most
Some
of them.
do,
A lot of them
some don't.
Because there's no parking along River.
Right. But the thing is
Less
that
parking.
but that's dense, and it's
Yeah.
dense in a pretty good
Well,
way.
but it's because it's only 2, 3 family, 4 family at the most.
Right. But the thing is, the total number of people that are actually packed in per square mile in a neighborhood
Yeah.
like that is quite high.
Yeah, but if you had an apartment buildings there, there'd even be more people.
You'd
So-
have more and more people, but the thing is, would that be
So-
ideal? And I think that's the discussion. I
Well,
think that
do we
still
need
has to
more
happen.
people or do we need more houses? I mean, there's all,
And
where does it end?
And where? Yeah. I mean, I like the idea
Yeah.
of having apartment house districts and other districts which are not so saturated with apartment buildings. And
But
have a
I'd like
mix.
to see a four-unit building maybe on a single-family lot. What's wrong with that?
I think in some places that would be exactly the right thing
Well,
to do.
not with this
Right.
current zoning in some areas.
Yeah, but the thing is that, it's not so bad to have single-family options as well, because some people like
Right.
to live in single-family homes.
But I mean, all along Pearl and Brookline, people are buying maybe they were double-deckers or triple-decker.
Yeah.
They're building like squares, they're building cubes, and they have nothing
Yeah.
to do with affordable housing
Right.
because they bought the property and that's what they're allowed to do there.
Yeah.
So, but we don't want that in other parts of the neighborhood.
I think,
In Cambridge. I
Right.
mean, but again, that's just money
Right.
that doesn't have any
right.
conditions on it except
True.
zoning.
So anyway, getting back to East Cambridge, I don't know whether they've got the necessary 2/3 majority.
Well, what about the Eversource issue? That was brought up, like, until you resolve that, you can't do this. Where's that at?
I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but personally, I think that the the Eversource, I mean,
It's gonna have to be
energy,
dealt with, but it's a
energy
separate-
needs
yeah.
is a separate issue.
I agree.
And
You
it's a
can't
legitimate
pin it onto
issue,
one
but I don't think you should
development.
hold
Yeah.
up one project simply
Right.
because of the acknowledgement
Right.
that maybe we're underpowered.
Right.
I mean, I have a good friend who works for Eversource who was actually working on installing transformers over in Riverside, Cambridgeport area the other day. And, you know, the people who actually work, I'm talking about the people who are installing the
Yeah.
hardware.
Yeah.
They'll be the first ones to say that these areas are really underpowered and they need to put in the transformers and stuff because
People want their juice.
People need their juice, you know?
And that's,
And
you know, it's
you
like.
can't wish it away.
That's never acknowledged. It's like, it's the big bad, you know, energy's bad, this is bad. But meanwhile, are we not wanting to be on the internet and use all these things? And, you know, I don't know.
I think there will be a future where there will be a lot more power sources, solar power,
Yeah,
wind
more
power,
battery
whatever,
stuff, yeah.
which will
Yeah.
supplant a lot of the fossil fuels. But the thing is, you can't just
No.
literally,
Right
pardon
now,
the
it's,
expression, you
it's
can't
as I've
just throw
said
a switch
before,
and
in,
make it
in
so.
this state, it's natural gas
Yeah.
that has replaced coal.
Yeah.
So until we get to a full,
Yeah, so there'll be a transition, and the way these things work, it takes 20 to 30 years
Yeah,
to
it's
make
not
real
gonna happen
transitions.
overnight.
And,
No.
you know, there's people going to be here in the meantime, so
Yeah.
you're going to have to do it.
So did this petition come before the planning board last week? I mean, what was the
Karp
recommendation?
Petition
Or is it-
has been
was it-
before the planning board, and the planning board came back with
they
a
have more
generally
questions?
positive recommendations, but they
Wanted
made
them to
they
tweak
made
it.
like a
Yeah.
list of about 7 or 8 specific
Okay, and did they
items.
come back since then?
No, the thing is, once the planning board has issued its recommendations,
They don't have to.
well, first off, the city council never has to listen to anything the planning board has
I
to
know,
say.
but they usually like
They
to.
usually like to, because at least when they're
They
not
have
filled
some
with
more
hubris,
information.
they will acknowledge that maybe they're not expert in everything.
Oh,
Then again,
stop.
sometimes they are filled with hubris and
No,
think
but
they think
most
they
of the
are.
time they want to wait to
I
see
agree.
the
They, for the
recommendations.
most part, they'll at least hear
Yeah.
what the planning board has to say. And the planning board was generally positive about it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
is there 6 votes to do something? I don't know. And you know, the thing is just because the petition comes in one form,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean it comes out of the ordinance committee process, or it'll presumably it's either going to get passed to the second reading tonight, or else it's just going to croak. I imagine at some form it will be passed to a second reading and be in the queue for ordination mid-December.
Yeah.
All right, so it would, you know, before the expiration. You know, you can amend it. Maybe tonight they'll be working hard and slashing and
Do you
cutting
think
and
because it's a
tweaking.
lame duck group, well, except for one, that they're going to try to not act on
Just-
it and let
no,
it expire?
One of the things that transcends city council terms is
Okay.
zoning ordinances. They carry right through. And
Yeah,
in
but this
fact-
one has to be decided by the 31st, I
Yeah,
thought.
right, so the
So
thing
this
is,
one is-
so they
it
could.
has to be.
They could just punt, but I
Yeah.
imagine they'll
You
do
don't think they'll
something
do
with
that?
it.
All right.
No, I think they've
We'll
already
find
let
out.
it expire once, and they came back with, in good faith,
Yeah.
the petitioners with a
That's true,
better proposal.
You're right, you're
I think
right.
the issue to me, and it's kind of a larger issue than
Mm.
just the Karp petition, is sort of it's the type of negotiation that takes place.
Oh, and you wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, that's something that's been kind of getting to me for
Yeah.
maybe about 10
You
or
give me
more
this,
years.
I'll give you that, but you
Yeah,
can be more
you know,
specific about
so
it.
I remember when Novartis was planning some things on Mass Ave, they said, okay, we're going to give you an upzoning, and then what are you going to give us for it, right? You know, and it was, you know, and I don't even remember what the package in the
Is
mitigation
that
was.
down the street here where you have Pagu and all those places now? That's where
Not
that-
on that side of the street,
Oh,
but
it's
it's
the
where
other
the
side?
Mile Inn design is, where they put.
Oh,
it's,
that.
from
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Novartis.
Oath Pizza and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So I think you know, considering the location, the upzoning
Yeah.
was, from a planning point of view, a good thing.
Yeah.
And it would have been a good thing even if they didn't cough up any additional mitigation or benefits. It just was sort of a good idea in that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
particular stretch. If you were a urban design type of person and a real planner, you might say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that seems like a good place for that sort of use. And that type of height and all of that stuff just
Mm-hmm.
seems like it's a good fit.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was not so long afterwards, there was also a petition to extend the University Park, Cambridge Port redevelopment, I think CRDD, whatever that stands for, up to Mass Ave, and now that's been built. as well. That's where the
Lots of things are held.
Yeah, the Pagu and the
part.
But it's Millennium Takeda, I think, is the
they're the big anchor.
They're the
there.
anchor
Yeah,
tenant
absolutely.
there. So that's sort of lab space.
Right.
And the thing is so they were holding out on whether that should be allowed to be upzoned, pending certain mitigation. I think they did agree to build some housing, not there, but offsite somewhere, and I don't know what the status of that is.
I see.
But then, it was also around that time when, I think it was when Sam Seidel was on the council, they wanted to kind of regularize the whole community benefits mechanism, and then it became more like, okay, if you're going to get your upzoning, you have to contribute X numbers of millions of dollars into a mitigation fund. And at that point, I started to get really concerned that this is becoming upzoning for cash.
That's not in an ordinance, a percentage of stuff that I thought that was.
The thing is, you can write zoning any way you like, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's within the confines of state law, and it'll hold up in court, right? But a lot of times these understandings, they would be part of a so-called MOI, or Memorandum of Understanding.
Okay.
So it wasn't, and that was a tag to the zoning. So I guess you could say it's part of the zoning.
Yeah.
But it's very, very site specific, and
so there's no standard percentage of any developments in Cambridge,
No,
other than the inclusionary zoning.
Inclusionary zoning and also the linkage fees. So
I guess that's what I'm confused by. What's the difference between linkage fees and the mitigation money?
Inclusionary zoning is a specific area of zoning for building housing.
Right, but what's the
linkage fee was for commercial development only.
Yeah.
It was basically an acknowledgement because of a nexus study, as they call it, that there is inevitably an impact in an area when you build commercial, and because people come there working jobs, that puts pressure on the housing market.
And is that set at a certain percentage of the project? Is that how it's
based
determined?
on per square feet.
So how is that different? Isn't that what you're talking about?
That linkage money is something, but that goes into, I think that typically ends up going into one of the housing funds. But the thing is then they sort of become more. There were yet another, pile of cash. We will donate, this many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars.
So the developers come up with this because they really want it to. So they go beyond.
It has become part of the bargaining to get the zoning. So in many respects, it's not. I don't want to be too harsh in saying this, but it does often seem like it's not. That no longer are the councilors actually talking about what constitutes a good plan or an ideal density or appropriate height, so much as
what can we get?
What are you going to give us for this?
Well, since we don't have any master plan.
Right. Well, even if we did,
still is, that's the way you do business.
I think that ultimately, if to whatever degree we have envisioned Cambridge or the various plans that have been in existence for years, you would certainly like to have any kind of changes in zoning at least be consistent with whatever these overarching plans are. So they did K2C2, which was marginally adopted. I'm not sure if you can even say it was ever adopted here, but the thing is it had certain principles that were expressed as part of the process.
Is that
Kendall and Central K2C2. And then, there was an expectation that zoning would follow. So if somebody comes in with zoning proposals that are consistent with what was expressed in that process, then people say, okay, that makes sense. That's an end result of a long zoning
where this is getting around all of that.
Yeah, it just seems like it's just more like, what are you going to give us for it? And there was one of the political candidates, Elon Levy, kept going on and on and on.
He would use the word contract zoning, which is essentially saying what we're
I think
talking
it really
about.
is what we're talking about. I don't know that he was necessarily the best messenger to carry that idea, but there is something to it, which is, and it seems to have been a trend over the last 10, 15 or more years, more toward, sort of like, let's downzone the city 20-something years ago, and then we'll bring it back up if you give us stuff.
So we'll upzone here, upzone there.
Yeah. And, to whatever degree the resulting zoning is consistent with overall plans and visions, great. That's fine. In fact, if I was a city council, I'd probably say, do it. You don't have to give us anything unless you want to do it as an act of good faith.
Wow.
But but having it so that it's sort of like a quid pro quo, pardon the expression, because I know that's in the news these
vernacular, right?
I mean, there were actually,
you look into this and I'll do that. No.
There were some city councilors as part of the committee report on the Karp Petition were specifically saying, well, what'll happen to all this stuff if they just build as of right at what they can do now? We lose all the bennies,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a pretty weird way of talking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The thing is, you should, as elected officials and city councilors, be just coming up with what constitutes sort of a best overall zoning plan. It shouldn't be project specific, but oftentimes that's what it's becoming.
Well, housing is the big issue, and people don't want to just see commercial development. They want to see what are you going to do for subsidized housing.
So that's a part of the.
I think that's like the under.
To whatever degree, that's part of planning. So, for example, if you wrote into the zoning generally that if you decided that everything should be mixed use, that every time some commercial property is going to come down on a corridor, that it has to be mixed in with housing, and just make that part of the rule. Or maybe there are some places where you'd say, no, that would not be the place for housing. For example, I wasn't a big fan of them trying to duct tape housing onto a self-storage facility in New Street.
Yeah, I was sort of in the middle on that. I wasn't quite clear on. To me, it looked, given that area, I didn't think it was so bad. But hey.
Well, I just didn't like it's become kind of like a part of the playbook now. You say, let's tape a few units onto this. I know, but if you've been down that street, there's like all this housing going on right on the other side that looks like, it used to be like junkyards almost. So, so I didn't see how that was going to impact it anymore. And it would overlook on the park. I don't know. But I understand there were some issues with it. So I thought they... Anyway, I find it to be kind of a not the best road to be heading down.
But as long as we have housing as the number one issue, it's always going to be. Yeah,
but I could very much see a situation, next year, somebody comes in and says, I would like to put in, 500,000 square feet of development. And then the mitigation is, it says, we will, if you just let us build sky high here, we'll throw X number of millions of dollars in here so that you can then use some other zoning mechanism to go build subsidized housing someplace else in the city.
I don't think we'll ever allow sky high, but then who knows? Some people consider what we're seeing now sky high. So.
I think that's why that conversation has to be we need to have a get together. We need to crack open a few beers and pour a few glasses of wine and have all the activist community, all the development community say, look, can we work something out here about what sort of constitutes a reasonable density for different parts of Cambridge as opposed to just having these one-offs?
All right, but can the city ordain or put in an ordinance height restriction throughout the city? Like no more, we can't do more than 400 feet anywhere in the city. Why don't they do that then?
Well, de facto, they do have that. Right now, you look through
you'd have to get a special permit?
Actually, there are...
Is there a citywide restriction?
There are effectively yes and no. All right? Like, for example, as I discovered when we were talking about the Harvard Square zoning petition that's been proposed.
Which I'd like you to go into a little more next half hour.
To say a little bit about it. But the thing is part of that actually had have one zone where there's technically no height restriction whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
And people say, well, wait, what kind of stuff is that? But when you factor in all the other restrictions, for example, historic preservation restrictions,
they wouldn't be able to
design guidelines, it's just
impossible.
not possible to actually do that. So you could say, well, there are places where there's no height restriction, but really there are.
Right.
Most districts do have specific height restrictions. I remember when Leland Chung was on the council, he wanted to have his 1,000-foot tower.
Yeah.
And
was it 1,000 or was it 500?
He said 1,000, but the thing is, in the end, when they were planning for Volpe, they actually the planning board was receptive to the idea of having a super tall building,
which is 500 feet,
which was architecturally significant.
Yes,
it could be
the tallest building in Cambridge.
It could be. I think right now the tallest building probably is about 300. No, courthouse isn't.
Seems so loomed tall. Maybe because there's nothing around it to kind of.
I think there are a couple buildings that are up in the 300 range.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I think in Kendall, even
in
Eastgate, MIT building, I think is of that order.
Okay.
is the green building on the MIT campus,
Oh,
maybe
right.
on that scale.
Right.
You know, I mean, when they built Mass in Maine here in Central Square, I think it topped off at about 19 stories.
Yeah.
And the most that's residential stories, which are a little bit shorter than commercial
Yeah.
stories. So
Yeah.
that's up in the 200-foot range.
I mean, either end of Cambridge seems to have the tallest buildings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, you know, to me, I have no problem with height if it's a tall cluster here and a tall cluster there.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would want to see just tall everywhere.
Well, there was
And
an
I wouldn't
idea
wa-
now to do the tier thing too. to
Yeah,
make
I
it look
think
less-
we
yeah.
sort of, there is kind of like a Cambridge Hugh Russell style
Like
step down
The
type of
wedding cake
architecture.
type thing.
Yeah, which, you know, keeps the sky available, which is good for
Yeah.
Rhonda Massey, right? You know, if you actually do that so that you don't have just a big wall right at every
Yeah.
street, you
Well,
can actually
What happened over at
see the sky.
University in Frank, where, you know, Kennedy Biscuit Lofts? You were around then. The whole Auburn Court.
Well, some of those buildings,
Oh, Kennedy Biscuit was there.
yeah, I mean,
That's true, and it was always that tall.
you know, the thing is, that's one of the things we definitely talked about as
Yeah.
part of Envision, and really
Yeah.
I've heard it many other places too, which is that what constitutes tall
True.
is also sort of a function of the width of the street.
Right,
If
and
you go to-
actually, it's not that it's tall. It's just that if you build
Right.
anything equal to that on the other side, it blocks your.
Yeah, so
Like,
if you have a
yeah.
pretty wide street, you
Yeah.
know, you can have relatively tall buildings on
True.
either side and
Yeah.
still get a sense of
Right.
openness within the street.
Right.
You know, and that can work out just fine.
Yeah.
And then there are other streets which are naturally narrow where occasionally it might be fun and interesting to have tall buildings on either side, but I don't know that most people would want to have that be
Mm-hmm. Right.
kind of the
Right.
Cambridge rule, really.
No.
You know. But anyway, I just hope that maybe as we bend the corner heading into the next term, that there's at least some room
Little
carved
more.
out for a serious conversation about, you know, let's work out this density issue so that it's not just fighting all the time about more, or none. YIMBYs versus NIMBYs, because that's getting us nowhere fast.
So you think that'll happen?
I don't know if it'll happen, but I sure as heck hope it
Okay.
does.